Time to turn this show over to the NBA insiders from ESPN.com. We've got David Thorpe, John Hollinger, and Henry Abbott from True Hoop. Now, I know all of you guys have been watching this Hawks-Celtics series, as we all have. David, I mean, the Hawks have made a great statement here. They've played well. They've made it interesting, but the Celtics sort of put the hammer down in Game 5. Should we assume that the series is over, that the Celtics have reestablished dominance now?
Oh, not remotely. They put the hammer down in Games 1 and 2 as well, but those games were in Boston. Atlanta's a different story. The Hawks aren't nearly as bad as people think from a talent standpoint. In fact, they're actually pretty close to Boston purely on talent. The difference is in execution. On the road, Boston's been terrific in most cases this year, but not in Atlanta. They really struggled. Atlanta's athletes and the energy in the building and the talent on the floor gave the Hawks a much bigger edge than most of us thought they would do. They played great. Can they do it in this next game? Who knows, but I actually think it'll be a competitive game. Joe Johnson might be the best player on the floor right now. That's not Kevin Garnett. He could be the difference like he was in Game 4.
The problem was he wasn't on the floor much, especially in the first half last night. John, was Mike Woodson a little too conservative with his potential foul trouble?
I think he absolutely was. You know, he kept Joe Johnson out of the game for 11 minutes in the first half because he had 2 fouls. But there wasn't really any major risk of Johnson getting into serious foul trouble. You're talking about one of the players with the lowest rates of fouls in the league in the regular season. So what Woodson essentially did was foul out Johnson for the Celtics in the second quarter instead of in the fourth. And I think that's why the Hawks were down 15 at halftime. They were a -12 with Johnson off the floor in the first half, and they played him pretty much to a draw when Johnson played. So I think that was a major tactical mistake.
Henry, we saw Kevin Durant win the Rookie of the Year award today. Reading your True Hoop there, I know Al Horford is a special rookie in his own right. Tell us a little bit about him.
Well, look, there are a lot of players who are extremely talented in this league, but there are very few who make it their business, their job, to worry about how the rest of their team is doing emotionally. And Tim Duncan's like that and has played a big part in San Antonio's success in recent years. Al Horford's showing those signs. He's taking teammates aside. Zaza Pachulia, we saw getting in Kevin Garnett's face. His coach tried to calm him down, didn't work. Then we see Al Horford put his arm around his shoulder, walk him to the bench, and he gets him cheering, getting the crowd going, and he has a teammate who's ready to focus again. David Thorpe wrote a little bit about Josh Smith at one point celebrating a little too much. Al Horford's the guy who calms him down, tells him that's time to focus. And then there's that famous incident where he yelled at Paul Pierce. People see a rookie yelling at a veteran, they think he's a hothead, but I don't think he's a maniac or anything. That's the only time he's done that all season. He's just found his team needed some fire, and he gave it to him. He told the Celtics and he told the Hawks that in one moment that the Hawks were not underlings, and I think that means a lot.
Has he been a leader off the court as well?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the implication here. I talked to some people who worked for the Hawks franchise, and they say that to them it's been clear from the second he got there that he's been a pretty extraordinary character who brings something to the team they haven't had in a long time.
Well, hey, guys, remember, too, he's the one that called his boys down in Gainesville, University of Florida, to bring in that, to send them that tape of When We Were Kings, the great documentary about the Ali Foreman fight in Africa. That was Al Horford doing that. And we also have to remember that he was one of the main 2 anchors for a team that won 2 national championships, not just one, at a school, my alma mater, that had never done that before. This is a special, special player, and only did win Rookie of the Year because Durant is also just as special and scores a lot more.
And this is special qualities from a veteran. We're seeing it from a rookie. It's unbelievable.
Absolutely. It's a great story. Guys, I want to get to the Rockets and Jazz. Game 6 tomorrow night. Jazz up 3-2. This series is kind of hard to figure. Houston, a dominating win in Game 5. How do you see this playing out, John?
Well, I was at Game 5, and it was really amazing how much Houston dominated that game at the defensive end. Utah was the second best offensive team on a per-possession basis during the regular season, and yet against Houston, they just can't get anything done, especially since Rafer Alston came back. You look at the 3 games Alston's been back. Houston played them to a draw in 2 games in Utah, and then blew them out in the 1 game in Houston. I think the Rockets have a great shot at going into Salt Lake City and pulling the upset in Game 6 and taking this series back to the Toyota Center for Game 7.
You know, Tracy McGrady carries around this awful track record in the playoffs, never won a playoff series in his career. Has he redeemed himself a bit in this series, Henry?
He's played well. I mean, I think that title isn't really so fair. People pile on him. I think it's true Grant Hill hasn't ever won a series either, and no one dumps that tag on him all the time. But, McGrady's played as well. Statistically, he's played as well as Kobe Bryant his whole career. He just hasn't had as good teammates, and this year he's been at both ends of the floor. He's been the best player on the floor for most of the games. He's been, his gas tank has been empty at the end of games, and okay, he was dealing with a couple of different injuries and he hasn't looked great, but I think maybe you just got to sit him a little more earlier in the game so he's fresher at the end, because it is the end of a long season when they had to put a lot of heart into that 22-win section they had of the season without Yao Ming. So I think, he's a tired guy, but he's a great player, and I don't think he needs to be knocked for his performance here.
This is where having Alston back really comes in, too, because I was at that game, too, where he completely ran out of gas. They didn't have Alston that game. They had to just run everything through McGrady. They really couldn't even afford to rest him or the game was going to get away from him, and that's why he looked so tired in that fourth quarter. I mean, he was completely out of gas. His jumpers were just flat, barely grazing the front of the rim, and that hasn't happened the last 3 games since Alston's been back. He's been a lot fresher and has stronger fourth quarters. The other thing people forget about McGrady, they knock him for not winning a series. He has one of the best playoff scoring averages of all time.
Yeah, and no one player wins a series, as we've been told over and over. You got to have at least a second guy or a third guy. It's a tough, maybe it's just a coincidence, but Tracy McGrady's still trying to get that first series win. Point blank, David, do you think the Rockets pull this out?
Well, I kind of feel like John feels. I'm actually doing the analysis for each of these games, and I have to predict a winner each time at ESPN.com. And this was the hardest decision I had to make. I actually went with Utah. I think Boozer's due. He's not played well in this series at all after playing solo against Houston last year. But it truthfully is a coin flip. If Houston were to win this game in the series, it would surprise me not at all. With Rayford back, they are an equal team at home or away against the Jazz.
Go ahead. The other thing you got to look at here is Darren Williams. I'm not sure he's close to 100% right now. I think that bruised muscle in his rear is bothering him more than he's let on. He also tweaked an ankle in Game 2, which nobody's really talked about. I'm wondering how fresh he is right now.
You have to know the Lakers are loving this, sitting back, resting, letting these two knock themselves out and spend a little extra energy before their next round matchup. Guys, let's save a little time. Up next, we're going to delve into the situation in Dallas where Avery Johnson might be headed next, and Henry will clear up a few things about Josh Howard and his extracurricular activities. We're back after this.